good morning and welcome back to World Talks as we'll discuss the latest from Ukraine. It's been 913 days since the start of the Russian invasion on Ukraine. In the latest developments, US President pledged 125 million in new military aid for Kyiv, while Narendra Modi of India visited Zelenskyy, saying that he is ready to help secure a peace deal. To discuss the current situation, I am joined here this morning by Jozef Hrabina, Geopolitical Risk Advisor, GeopoLytics. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning from Bratislava.
So let me start by asking about these latest developments. What can we expect following Modi's visit?
Well, it's a breakthrough visit. It's the first time since Ukraine gained its independence that any prime minister of India would visit Ukraine. Therefore, just this very visit is really significant to bilateral relations of these two countries. As far as the details go, there the most important part is trade and exchange in humanitarian area. Because India is taking neutral stance towards Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We know Narendra Modi visited Moscow around a month ago, and India is offering help with peace talks. This is very important to stress out because India has a history of neutrality. During the Cold War, India would cooperate with both alienated parties, and we know that today India is rising to prominence on the international stage. We can even call it a great power of global significance, and therefore it really can be that India might be one of the key actors in negotiating a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia.
Right, and another country that is an ally of Russia and also of India is, of course, China. And we have Li Qiang on a visit to Russia and now to Belarus. So what can we expect after this visit?
I wouldn't claim that China and India are allies. Quite the contrary. India is very well aware. I mean, we need to understand geopolitical situation of India. If you take westward of India, there is Pakistan, which is a sworn enemy of India. If you would look northwards, you would see Central Asia, which is a dominion of Russia and China as well. And on eastwards or northeast, there is China, which is constantly having trouble, with whom India is constantly having trouble, not to mention the ocean issues and maritime issues India has with China, be it issue with Maldives, where China is trying to build up its military bases. So if you take a look at this geopolitics, India is in a very unfortunate situation, and it needs to thread very delicate balance in order to prevent to be encircled by enemies. As far as the Chinese visits to Eastern Europe go, we know that China has a lot of influence over Belarus right now, because for Belarus, China is basically a trade lifeline after the Western sanctions have been imposed on Belarus. So we know that China is maybe sometimes even more influential than Moscow in Belarus because of the economic issues. And President Lukashenko knows that he needs to balance between Moscow and China in order to prevent being swallowed completely by Moscow, not just to the current extent, but to a larger extent. That would probably mean complete loss of sovereignty of Belarus.
Right, so just taking a step back and taking a look at all these pieces of the puzzle, What developments are you expecting in the near future? Because a lot is going on, right?
Yes, we see Ukraine is pushing diplomacy recently, which is a great sign. Uh, we know that the situation is not very good on the battlefield, even despite recent successes in Kursk Oblast. So dare to call it successes, uh, and uh, and but still we see, and I'm I don't want to do any self-promotion, but I'm saying this from the end of 2022. Neither of the sides has capabilities to push for a complete victory. So we will have to see some peace negotiations by end of this year. I think everybody is waiting for the results in the US presidential elections, which will be crucial for the future of diplomatic talks, because the US is the, I would say, major guarantor of Ukraine's sovereignty and Ukraine's international, let's say, um, influence, and uh, and that will tell us a lot about how the future peace talks or potential ceasefire agreement will look like.
Right, and are these peace talks on a horizon? Because people are saying that the Kursk incursion was done in order for Ukraine to have an argument during these talks. Do you agree with the statement?
Yes, I think Kursk invasion, the major logic behind the Kursk invasion is to show that Russia is fighting at the, the full capacity on the front line in Ukraine, and therefore Russia doesn't have um, much resources to defend its own territory, and it's very vulnerable. Uh, and that gives a lot of weight to Ukraine's argument to stop the war. And secondly, now occupied Russian territories can be used in territory exchange in potential peace talks, or any kind of chip, quote unquote chip, in exchange for any concessions from Russian side.
And can we be sure that the situation will not escalate? And here I'm referring to the use of Western weapons. Of course, the West was not agreeing to that at the very beginning. Now we have the Kursk incursion situation on the ground, and Zelenskyy has called Putin threats a bluff. So where do we go from here?
This is this is actually a very important notion, because we've been hearing that attack on Russian territory is basically a pretext to launching a nuclear strike from Russia. This hasn't happened. I think everybody in Russia is now surprised. Mm, First days of incursion, I would even say, the Moscow or the Kremlin powers were in panic and they didn't know what to do. Um, it creates a huge precedent for the future, that it this nuclear saber rattling is not always just about serious threats, but about deterrent. And that's why nuclear weapons exist today. Great powers usually don't use them as a tool, as an efficient tool in warfare. They use them as a deterrent to protect themselves. This deterrent was largely diminished by Ukraine's show that they can attack Russian territory, and Russia is not using nuclear weapons.
Right, says today Ukraine is celebrating its Independence Day. So if you were to evaluate the country's standing on the international scene, how is it and where is Ukraine going from here in terms of perhaps EU accession or NATO membership?
I believe this is a great day for Ukraine. As your colleague said in previous show, uh, none of us have hope that Ukraine will see another Independence Day after Russia invaded it in 2022. And we see that Ukraine has survived for 3 years, and it has become a symbol of resilience against much stronger state. And this gives a lot of diplomatic prestige to Ukraine, but also we should not forget that it comes with a great responsibility, and um, some of that prestige has been diminished by, I would say, very unfortunate management of international aid, with this and the reputation damage that is Ukrainian presidential administration trying to tackle. But I see now, after, especially after Kursk incursion, that this is improving. I think even with the international help, the help is flowing, even though there are some problems. Nobody really expected that this war will protract for so long in political circles. In analytical circles, we knew that this is going to be a long-term conflict. Russia, even though despite its initial catastrophic performance, it has put a lot of its credibility into this conflict, and Vladimir Putin had no other chance just to overcome these issues. Otherwise, this would mean his end if he would fail in this conflict.
Right, so this is the third Independence Day that Ukraine is celebrating since the start of the Russian invasion. And I wanted to ask you about the internal situation in the country. What about President Zelensky's standing? Is he a firm leader, or is there perhaps some competition from within political circles in the country?
It is a very complicated situation. You find yourself fighting war with an external enemy, and then you find yourself fighting war with enemy from within, which is on one hand political opponents, but then also Ukraine is not perfect country. We know its issues, and especially in the past year when the national event after the unsuccessful Ukrainian offensive, many information about the management of international aid and basically about corruption started to soak through the positive PR of a resilient country fighting much stronger opponent, aggressor, to be more precise. And I think this is something that is really impacting internal unity and social stability in the country. We know the mobilization law has been really has been mm, enforced on in ways that were upsetting many people. There were severe electricity blackouts or power blackouts over the course of the spring until the midsummer. Now the situation has improved, but these blackouts were adding to the mix. So the situation or the moods in the population aren't really good. Population of President Zelensky's, I'm sorry, popularity of President Zelensky is decreasing, and Ukraine didn't hold presidential elections it was supposed to hold. But how can you have these elections when 20% of your territory is occupied, and how? I mean, there's a reasonable argument behind why not to have presidential elections. They were about to happen this March, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a very dangerous mix, but this also comes with fighting 3 year exhausting war, and I don't think any other country would do any better. It's really exhausting. It's really demoralizing. It's traumatizing for the entire population. So this comes hand in hand with low morale.
Jozef Hrabina, Geopolitical Risk Advisor, thank you, sir, for being with us. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.